There's a skeleton in a museum in Ethiopia. She's small, about 3.5 feet tall. She died 3.2 million years ago in what's now the Afar Desert. Her name is Lucy. And she might be the reason you're here right now. Not just you personally, all of us. Every human being who's ever walked upright, built cities, written poetry, looked up at the stars and wondered. Lucy stands at a crossroads in our story. Before her, our ancestors moved through trees. After her, we walked toward everything that would make us human. But here's the thing. Lucy herself wasn't human, not even close. Her brain was about the size of a chimpanzee's, a third the size of yours. She couldn't talk, couldn't make tools, couldn't control fire or paint on cave walls or bury her dead with ceremony. Everything we think of as human came millions of years after she died. So, why does she matter? Because Lucy walked upright, fully upright, on 2 legs. Her skeleton proves it. The shape of her pelvis, the angle of her femur, the structure of her feet. She didn't knuckle walk like chimps. She didn't swing through branches like earlier apes. She stood up and walked across open ground. And that single change set everything else in motion. Think about what walking upright means. Your hands are suddenly free. Not sometimes. Always. You're not using them to move anymore. They're available for carrying things, for making things, for gestures that might become language. Your field of vision changes too. You can see farther across the landscape, spot predators earlier, notice herds in the distance, track the movement of weather across the horizon. Your body starts to change in ways that seem small but aren't. Your throat repositions. Millions of years later, that repositioning makes complex speech possible. Your spine curves differently. Your skull balances on top of your spine instead of hanging forward. That frees up energy. Energy that eventually goes to building bigger brains. None of this happened quickly. Lucy's brain stayed small. Her species, Australopithecus afarensis, existed for almost 1 million years without getting much smarter. But they walked, and walking upright was the first domino. The researchers who found Lucy in 1974 were listening to the Beatles' song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds that night at camp. That's how she got her name. It seems almost too casual for something so important. This tiny skeleton that rewrote our understanding of human origins, named after a psychedelic pop song. But maybe that's fitting, because Lucy represents the moment when our story stopped being about survival in trees and started being about something else, something that would lead to Beatles songs and museums and the ability to wonder about our own beginnings. She died young, maybe 25 years old, probably fell from a tree. Even though she walked upright, she still climbed. Her arms were long, her shoulders built for hanging. She lived between worlds, part tree dweller, part ground walker. And in that between space, everything changed. The Afar Desert is one of the hottest places on Earth. Temperatures hit 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The ground cracks open from the heat. Nothing grows there now, just rocks and sand and the occasional thorn bush clinging to life. But 3.2 million years ago it was different. There was water, a lake, maybe several lakes. Trees grew along the shores, grassland stretched between patches of forest. Animals came to drink. Hippos wallowed in the shallows. Crocodiles waited in the murky water. Antelopes grazed on the plains. And somewhere in this landscape, Lucy lived. We can reconstruct her world from the fossils found alongside her, from the layers of rock and sediment, from pollen preserved in ancient soil, from the bones of other creatures that died in the same place at roughly the same time. It wasn't Eden, but it wasn't a wasteland either. The climate was changing. Africa was drying out. The great forest that once covered much of the continent was shrinking, breaking apart into islands of trees separated by open grassland. This shift had been happening for millions of years, and it was forcing our ancestors to make a choice: stay in the trees and compete for dwindling forest resources, or venture out onto the ground. Lucy's species chose the ground, or maybe the ground chose them. Either way, they adapted. Their bodies tell the story. Lucy stood about 3.5 feet tall. She weighed maybe 60 pounds, small by our standards, but her proportions were different from earlier apes. Her legs were longer relative to her arms, not as long as ours. She still had those long arms built for climbing, but her legs had changed. They were strong, built for walking long distances. Her feet were the biggest change. Ape feet are like hands. The big toe sticks out to the side. It grabs branches. It's perfect for climbing, but terrible for walking. Lucy's feet were different. Her big toe lined up with the others. It didn't grab. It pushed off. Her foot had an arch. That arch works like a spring. It stores energy with each step and releases it. Makes walking more efficient. Her knee told the same story. The angle of her femur, the way it connected to her tibia. Everything about her lower body said she walked upright as her primary way of moving. But her upper body still remembered the trees. Her shoulders were high and broad. Her arms were long and powerful. Her fingers curved slightly, perfect for gripping branches. She lived between two worlds. She could walk for miles across open ground, but she probably slept in trees at night, away from the predators that hunted after dark. The landscape she moved through was dangerous. Saber-toothed cats prowled the grasslands. Hyenas hunted in packs. Giant crocodiles lurked near water. Being small and relatively defenseless meant being careful, being smart about when to move and when to hide. Lucy's group probably numbered 20 or 30 individuals, maybe more. They moved together across the landscape. Safety in numbers. Some kept watch while others fed. They communicated with calls and gestures, not language, not yet, but something more complex than what chimps do today. They ate mostly plants, fruits when they could find them, seeds, roots dug from the ground, leaves from low bushes. Occasionally they might have scavenged meat from a kill. But they weren't hunters. They didn't have the tools or the coordination. The world was full of food if you knew where to look, and Lucy's species had been learning for hundreds of thousands of years which plants were safe, which roots held water, when certain trees bore fruit, where to find termite mounds that could be broken open for protein. This knowledge passed from mothers to children, from older group members to younger ones. It wasn't written down. There was no language to explain it, but it was learned, remembered, shared. The seasons mattered. Wet season brought abundance. Plants grew, animals multiplied, food was everywhere. But dry season was harder. Water sources shrank, plants withered. The group had to range farther to find enough to eat. They probably followed the same routes year after year, generation after generation, paths worn into the landscape by countless feet, from the sleeping trees to the water source, from the water to the feeding grounds, from the feeding grounds back to safety. At night they climbed. Lucy's long arms pulled her up into the branches. She found a comfortable fork in the tree, settled in. Around her, the rest of the group did the same. Mothers held infants. Older juveniles clustered together. The adults positioned themselves on the outer branches. First line of defense if anything tried to climb up. Below, the sounds of the African night. Hyenas calling. The roar of a distant cat. The splash of something entering water. The rustle of smaller creatures moving through grass. But up in the trees, relatively safe. This is how Lucy's ancestors had slept for millions of years. And even though they walked upright now, even though they spent their days on the ground, Nighttime still belonged to the trees. The sky above was clearer than any sky you've ever seen. No light pollution, no haze, just stars stretching from horizon to horizon. The Milky Way blazed overhead, so bright it cast shadows. Did Lucy look up? Did she see those stars and wonder? Probably not. Not the way we wonder. Her brain wasn't built for that kind of thinking. She saw them, registered them as part of the world. But she didn't ask what they were or why they were there. That kind of questioning was still millions of years away. The landscape around her was alive in ways that are hard to imagine now. Herds of animals moving across the plains, thousands of individuals, the ground shaking with their passage, birds darkening the sky in massive flocks, fish filling the lake so thick you could almost walk across. Them. This abundance supported Lucy's group, but it also meant competition. Other Australopithecines lived in the same area, different groups with their own territories, their own feeding grounds, their own sleeping trees. Sometimes these groups encountered each other. Usually they avoided conflict, moved away, gave each other space. But sometimes, especially when food was scarce, there might have been confrontations, displays of aggression, shouting and branch shaking, occasionally violence. Lucy's group defended their territory, the places they knew, the resources they depended on. This was their world, the only world they knew. The water was crucial, the lake or river where they drank, where they cooled off in the heat of the day, where they found certain plants that only grew near water. This was the centre of their range. Everything else radiated out from there. And it was near water that Lucy died. We don't know exactly how. The bones show signs of falling, fractures consistent with impact. She might have fallen from a tree, maybe while climbing to sleep, maybe while reaching for fruit. A branch broke, or she slipped, or something startled her and she lost her grip. The fall killed her, or injured her badly enough that she couldn't survive. She died near water. Her body lay there. Scavengers probably found her, scattered some of the bones, but enough remained. And then came the crucial part, flooding. The water rose, covered her body with sediment, layer after layer of sand and silt. This protected her bones, kept them from weathering away, kept them from being completely scattered or destroyed. Over millions of years, more layers built up. The bones fossilized. Minerals replaced the organic material. The bones turned to stone. But they kept their shape, their structure, all the information about how Lucy lived and moved. The landscape changed around her. The lake dried up. The climate shifted. The forest disappeared. The animals that lived alongside her went extinct. Species rose and fell. The continents drifted. Mountains grew. Rivers changed course. And Lucy's bones waited in the rock. Waited for 3.2 million years. Waited for creatures who didn't exist yet. Creatures who would one day walk upright like she did. But who would also build tools and make fire and develop language and eventually create science and museums and the ability to find her bones and understand what they meant. The world she lived in was nothing like ours, but it was the world that made ours possible. The hot African landscape where walking upright first became the dominant way our ancestors moved, where hands became free, where bodies began the long transformation that would eventually lead to us. Every step Lucy took across that ancient grassland was a step toward everything that came after. The world she inhabited was the testing ground, the place where evolution experimented with this new way of being. This upright ape that could walk for miles, that could see far across open ground, that had hands available for something other than locomotion. She didn't know she was part of something bigger. She just lived, walked, ate, slept in trees, died young. But her bones preserved the evidence. proof that this transition happened, that our ancestors really did walk upright millions of years before they developed large brains or culture or anything we'd recognize as human. The Afar Desert keeps her bones now, in a museum in Addis Ababa, behind glass, carefully preserved, studied by scientists from around the world. But in a sense, she's still there, still walking across that ancient landscape, still showing us where we came from. If you're using this to fall asleep, that's exactly why I make these videos. Maybe subscribe and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I always check the comments, and it's fascinating. Someone in Tokyo at sunrise, someone in London at lunch, someone in California at midnight, all drifting off to the same ancient story about our shared past. There's something comforting about that. People all over the world, different time zones, different languages, but all connected by curiosity about where we came from, about Lucy walking across that hot African grassland, about the long journey from there to here. All right, back to the story. November 24th, 1974. The sun was setting over the Afar Desert. Donald Johanson was tired. His team had been digging for weeks. They'd found some animal bones, a few stone tools, nothing special, nothing worth the heat and the dust and the endless hours of careful excavation. Johanson almost didn't go out that afternoon. He'd been working on his notes. Tom Gray, a graduate student, asked if he wanted to check one more gully before calling it a day. Johanson said yes. He still doesn't know why. They walk through the desert, scanning the ground, looking for anything that might be fossil bone instead of rock. You train your eyes to see the difference, the colour, the texture, the way light hits organic material versus stone. Gray saw it first, a piece of arm bone sticking out of the slope. Then Johanson saw more, a piece of skull, part of a thigh bone, fragments of spine. They were everywhere, scattered across maybe 30 feet of hillside. They started yelling, running back and forth, pointing. This wasn't one bone, this wasn't a fragment, this was a skeleton, an almost complete skeleton, of something that died more than 3 million years ago. That night the whole camp celebrated. Someone had a tape player, the Beatles were playing. Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds came on. Someone said they should call her Lucy. The name stuck. But here's what's really interesting. In that moment, standing in the desert at sunset, they knew they'd found something important. They didn't know how important. They couldn't have known. Because Lucy would change everything we thought we knew about human evolution. The skeleton was 40% complete. That might not sound like much, but for something that old, it's extraordinary. Most fossils from that time period are fragments. A jaw here, a tooth there, maybe part of a skull if you're lucky. Lucy had pieces of her arms, her legs, her pelvis, her ribs, parts of her hands and feet, vertebrae from her spine, fragments of her skull, enough to reconstruct what she looked like, how she moved, how she lived. The bones told a story. But first, scientists had to figure out how old they were. They used volcanic ash layers above and below where Lucy was found. Volcanic ash can be dated precisely using radioactive elements. The ash above her was 2.9 million years old. The ash below was 3.4 million years old. Lucy died somewhere in between. They settled on 3.2 million years as the best estimate. Then came the hard work, cleaning the bones, studying them, measuring every angle and curve, comparing them to other fossils, to modern apes, to modern humans, trying to understand what kind of creature this was. The skull told them she wasn't human. Her brain was small, about 400 cubic centimeters. A chimpanzee's brain is about 350. A human brain is about 1,350. Lucy's brain was closer to an ape's than to ours. Her face was different too. It jutted forward. The jaw was larger, the teeth were big and strong, built for chewing tough plant material, fruits, leaves, maybe roots. But then they looked at her legs, her pelvis, her feet, and everything got complicated. The pelvis was wide and short, like a human's, not long and narrow like an ape's. The hip socket was positioned differently. The whole structure was built for walking upright, not for climbing trees, not for knuckle walking like gorillas, for standing on two legs and moving forward. The femur confirmed it. That's your thigh bone, the one that connects your hip to your knee. In apes, it's relatively straight. In humans, it angles inward. This creates a more efficient walking stride. It lets you balance your weight over your feet as you move. Lucy's femur angled inward, just like yours does. The knee joint was another clue. It was designed to lock when fully extended. This lets you stand for long periods without using much muscle energy. Apes can't do this. Their knees don't lock. They have to use constant muscle tension to stay upright. Even Lucy's feet told the story. The big toe was aligned with the other toes, not opposable like an ape's. You can't grab things with your feet if your big toe points the same direction as the others, but you can walk much better. Scientists spent years analysing these bones. They built computer models. They studied the biomechanics. They compared measurements to hundreds of other specimens. The conclusion was unavoidable. Lucy walked upright, not occasionally, not just when convenient, all the time. This changed everything. Because before Lucy, scientists thought big brains came first. They thought our ancestors got smart. Then they started walking, upright. Then they developed culture and tools and everything else. Lucy proved that wrong. She walked like a human, but she thought like an ape. Upright walking came first, millions of years before big brains, millions of years before tools, millions of years before anything we'd recognize as human intelligence. Why? That's the question that keeps scientists up at night. Why would natural selection favor walking on two legs before it favored bigger brains? One theory focuses on energy. Walking upright uses less energy than knuckle walking. Studies have measured this. A human walking uses about 75% less energy than a chimpanzee moving the same distance. In a drying climate where food is spread out that matters, you can cover more ground, search more area, find more food for the same energy cost. Another theory is about carrying things. If you're on two legs, your hands are free. You can carry food back to a safe place. You can carry infants. You can carry tools or weapons. Apes have to put things down to move. Humans don't. Some scientists think it's about seeing farther. Stand up in tall grass and you can spot predators. You can see across the savannah. You can watch for danger or opportunity. Stay low and you're blind. Others point to heat management. Standing upright exposes less body surface to direct sun. The hottest part of the day, you want to minimize sun exposure. Two legs do that better than four. Probably all these factors played a role. Evolution rarely has one cause. It's usually a combination. Multiple pressures pushing in the same direction. Multiple advantages adding up. But here's what really matters. Lucy represents a moment when our ancestors made a choice. Not consciously, not deliberately. But through the slow pressure of natural selection, they committed to a new way of moving through the world. That choice had consequences. Walking upright freed the hands. Over millions of years, hands that didn't need to support body weight could become more precise, more sensitive, better at manipulation. Walking upright changed the pelvis. That would later affect childbirth, make it harder, more dangerous, but also create pressure for bigger brains to be born earlier, less developed, more dependent on learning. Walking upright changed how we saw the world. Literally. Your eyes are higher, your perspective shifts. You see farther, you see differently. Maybe that changes how you think, how you understand space and distance and your place in the landscape. Lucy didn't know any of this. She walked because that's what her body did. She ate. She slept. She avoided predators. She probably lived in a small group. Maybe she had offspring. Maybe her genes are part of the chain that leads to you. She died near water. Maybe she fell. Maybe she was attacked. Maybe she got sick. Her body lay in the mud. Sediment covered it. More sediment. More layers. Minerals slowly replaced bone, turned organic material to stone, preserved her shape, her structure, her story. For 3.2 million years she waited. The climate changed, the lake dried up, the forest became desert, continents shifted, ice ages came and went, species evolved and went extinct, and Lucy's bones lay buried in the earth until that afternoon in November, when two scientists decided to check one more gully, when the angle of the sun hit a piece of bone just right, when chance and preparation met in the way they sometimes do. The discovery made headlines. Lucy became famous. Her skeleton travelled to museums around the world. Millions of people saw her, looked at her small frame, her ancient bones, tried to imagine what she was like, what she saw, how she lived. Scientists made casts of the bones, studied them from every angle, published hundreds of papers, argued about details, refined theories, built on her evidence. More fossils were found. Lucy's species, Australopithecus afarensis, is now known from hundreds of specimens, some older than Lucy, some younger, some bigger, some smaller. The picture gets clearer with each discovery, but Lucy remains special. She was first. She was complete enough to tell the story clearly. She proved that upright walking came before big brains, that our ancestors committed to 2 legs long before they became human in any other sense. She stands at the beginning of the path, the long path from ape to human. She took the first steps, literally. Everything that came after, all the changes that made us who we are, started with that shift, from 4 legs to 2, from the trees to the ground, from there to here. The bones answered questions nobody knew how to ask. When scientists first laid out Lucy's skeleton, they saw contradictions. Her skull looked like an ape's. Her legs looked almost human. Her arms were somewhere in between. Nothing made sense according to the theories they had. Science works by building models. You look at evidence. You form a hypothesis. You test it. You refine it. Before Lucy, the model was simple. Big brains came first, then tools, then walking upright. Intelligence drove everything else. Lucy broke that model. Her brain was tiny. No tools were found with her, but she walked upright constantly. The evidence was clear. Walking came first. Everything else followed later. Let's talk about what her bones actually proved. Not what scientists thought, not what theories predicted. What the physical evidence showed beyond any doubt. The pelvis was the smoking gun. In apes, the pelvis is tall and narrow. The hip bones rise up like blades. This design works great for climbing. The muscles attach at angles that give power for pulling your body up through branches. But it's terrible for walking. Your weight shifts side to side with each step. It's inefficient, unstable, exhausting. Human pelvises are completely different, short and wide. The hip bones flare out to the sides. This creates a bowl shape. Your internal organs rest in this bowl. Your weight drops straight down through your spine into your legs. The muscles attach at angles that stabilize your body over one leg while the other swings forward. Lucy's pelvis was short and wide. The bowl shape was there. The muscle attachment points matched humans, not apes. When scientists measured the angles, they found something remarkable. Her pelvis was more similar to a modern human's than to any living ape's. But there's more. The sacrum tells its own story. That's the triangular bone at the base of your spine where it connects to your pelvis. In apes, it's narrow and angled backward. In humans, it's wide and faces more downward. This helps transfer weight from your spine to your legs. Lucy's sacrum was wide, oriented like a human's, built for vertical weight transfer. The hip socket confirmed everything. In apes, it faces somewhat to the side. In humans, it faces more forward and down. This affects how your leg moves, where your weight falls, how stable you are on one leg. They measured Lucy's hip socket orientation. They compared it to dozens of ape specimens, dozens of human specimens. Lucy's matched the human pattern. Not perfectly, but much closer to us than to any ape. Now look at the femur, your thigh bone. This is where the evidence gets really interesting. In apes, the femur is relatively straight. It drops almost vertically from the hip to the knee. This means when an ape stands upright, its feet are far apart. Wide stance, unstable, hard to balance. In humans, the femur angles inward. This is called the carrying angle. It brings your knees together under your center of gravity. Your feet can be close together. You're stable, balanced. You can stand on one leg easily. Lucy's femur had a carrying angle, not as pronounced as a modern human's, but definitely there, definitely angled inward. This one feature proves she walked upright regularly. You don't develop a carrying angle unless you're spending serious time on two legs. The knee joint added more evidence. Scientists looked at the shape of the joint surfaces, how the bones fit together. In apes, the knee is relatively simple. It bends and straightens. That's about it. Human knees are more complex. They lock when fully extended. This locking mechanism lets you stand for hours without much muscle effort. Your bones support your weight. Your muscles just stabilize. It's incredibly energy efficient. Lucy's knee showed the beginning of this locking mechanism, not fully developed, but present. The joint surfaces had the right shape. The angles were correct. She could lock her knees, stand upright without constant muscle tension. Even her ankle told the story. The angle where your shin bone meets your foot determines how you walk. In apes, this angle allows the foot to bend in multiple directions. Great for gripping branches, bad for forward walking. In humans, the ankle is more restricted. It mainly bends up and down. This creates a rigid lever for pushing off with each step. You lose flexibility. You gain efficiency. Lucy's ankle was more restricted than an ape's, more rigid. Better for walking, worse for climbing. The foot bones clinched it. Scientists found parts of Lucy's foot. The big toe was the key. In apes, the big toe sticks out to the side. It's opposable. You can grab branches with it. It's like having a thumb on your foot. Human big toes are different. They line up with the other toes, point forward. You can't grab anything. But when you walk, that big toe is the last point of contact with the ground. It provides the final push forward. It's essential for efficient walking. Lucy's big toe pointed forward, aligned with her other toes. She couldn't grip branches with her feet. But she could walk really well. Scientists didn't stop with the bones themselves. They analysed the biomechanics. They built computer models of Lucy's skeleton. They simulated how forces would transfer through her body during walking, during running, during climbing. The model showed something clear. Lucy's body was optimized for upright walking. The forces flowed smoothly from her spine through her pelvis into her legs. Minimal stress, maximum efficiency. She was built for this. But the models also showed she could still climb. Her arms were longer than a human's relative to her body. Her fingers were curved. Her shoulder joints were mobile. She wasn't trapped on the ground. She could escape into trees if needed. This makes sense. Evolution doesn't flip a switch. It transitions gradually. Lucy lived in a world with leopards, with hyenas, with saber-toothed cats. Being able to climb a tree could save your life. Natural selection wouldn't eliminate that ability until the benefits of ground living clearly outweighed the risks. Scientists also studied the microscopic structure of Lucy's bones. Bones aren't solid. They're living tissue. They respond to stress. The pattern of tiny struts inside the bone reflects how forces move through it during life. They looked at the internal structure of Lucy's femur. The pattern matched humans doing lots of walking, not apes doing lots of climbing. Her bones had remodeled themselves in response to the specific stresses of bipedal walking. This is powerful evidence. You can argue about angles and measurements, but bone structure doesn't lie. It records what the body actually did during life. The spine provided more clues. Your spine has curves. These curves act like springs. They absorb shock when you walk. They help balance your head over your body. Apes have relatively straight spines. Humans have pronounced curves. Lucy's spine showed the beginning of human-like curves, not as developed as yours, but definitely there. Her body was adapting to the specific challenges of walking upright. Scientists even analysed her centre of gravity, where your weight is concentrated. In apes, the centre of gravity is high and forward. This works for climbing but makes upright walking unstable. In humans, the centre of gravity is lower and more central, right around your hips. This makes bipedal walking much more stable. Lucy's skeletal proportions put her centre of gravity in a human-like position. Lower, more central, better for walking. All this evidence points the same direction. Lucy walked upright as her primary mode of movement. Not occasionally, not just when convenient, constantly. It's how she moved through the world. But here's what really matters. This wasn't just about Lucy personally. She represents a species, Australopithecus afarensis. Scientists have found hundreds of specimens from this species now, from sites across East Africa, from time periods spanning almost 1 million years. Every specimen shows the same adaptations, the same pelvic structure, the same femur angles, the same foot anatomy. This wasn't a weird individual. This was how the species moved, and this species existed for almost 1 million years, from about 3.9 million years ago to about 2.9 million years ago. For that entire time, they walked upright with small ape-sized brains. For that entire time, they made no tools, left no art, built nothing we'd recognize as culture. Walking upright was enough. It was the adaptation that mattered. It let them survive, reproduce, spread across the landscape. For 1 million years it was sufficient. This tells us something profound about evolution. It doesn't work toward a goal. It doesn't aim for intelligence or culture or anything else. It just solves immediate problems. Walking upright solved problems. It let Lucy's species find food more efficiently, carry things, see farther, manage heat better. That was enough. The big brains would come later. The tools would come later. The art and language and everything we think of as human would come much later. But none of it could happen without this first step, this commitment to 2 legs instead of 4. Lucy's bones proved this sequence, locked it down, made it undeniable. Before Lucy, scientists could theorize. After Lucy, they had to accept the evidence. The implications spread through anthropology, through evolutionary biology, through our understanding of what makes us human. We're not humans because we're smart. We're smart because we started walking upright. The walking came first. Everything else followed from that initial change. Lucy stands at the beginning. Her bones mark the moment when our ancestors committed to a new path. When they came down from the trees and started the long walk toward humanity. She couldn't know what would follow, couldn't imagine cities or spacecraft or poetry. She just walked. And that was enough. Walking upright changed everything. But why? What was so special about standing on two legs that it set our ancestors on a path toward humanity? The answer isn't obvious. Walking upright seems like a small thing. Apes can do it. Bears can do it. Even some birds hop around on two legs. So what made it revolutionary for us? Start with energy. Moving through the world takes fuel. Your body burns calories with every step, every climb, every reach. Evolution favours efficiency. The animals that use less energy to get the same result have an advantage. They need less food. They can survive lean times better. They can invest more energy in reproduction. Quadrupedal walking works great in forests. 4 legs are stable. You can move through branches, climb trees, swing from limb to limb. Chimpanzees are incredibly efficient in trees. They barely think about it. Their bodies are built for that environment. But on open ground, something changes. Scientists have measured this. They put chimpanzees on treadmills, measured their oxygen consumption, tracked how much energy they used walking on 4 legs versus 2 legs. The results were clear. On flat ground, chimps use about the same energy either way. Sometimes bipedal walking is actually more efficient. Now think about Lucy's world. The forests were shrinking. Grasslands were expanding. The distance between food sources was growing. An ape that could walk upright efficiently had an advantage. Not a huge advantage, but enough. Over thousands of generations, that small advantage compounds. The individuals who walked upright more easily had slightly more energy left over. They could travel farther, search longer for food, survive dry seasons better, have more offspring. Those offspring inherited the traits that made upright walking easier. Natural selection doesn't need big advantages. Small ones work fine if they're consistent, if they apply generation after generation. Walking upright was that kind of advantage. But energy efficiency was just the beginning. Walking upright freed the hands. This seems obvious now, but think about what it meant. Quadrupedal apes use their hands for walking. Their hands touch the ground with every step. They can't carry things while moving. They can carry something in their mouth, or hold it in one hand while walking awkwardly on 3 limbs. That's about it. Lucy could carry things, both hands free, while walking normally. This opened up possibilities. She could gather food in one location and carry it somewhere else. She could pick fruit and bring it to her offspring. She could collect more than she could eat immediately. This might not sound revolutionary, but it changed the economics of survival. Most apes eat where they find food. They can't transport it efficiently. This limits their options. They need to stay near food sources. They can't plan ahead much. Carrying ability changes that equation. You can gather food during the day and bring it back to a safe sleeping spot. You can collect extra when food is abundant. You can share with others. The whole social structure starts shifting. Scientists have studied modern hunter-gatherers, groups that still live by gathering wild foods. Carrying is fundamental to their survival. They use bags, baskets, slings. They transport food, water, tools, children. Walking upright makes all of this possible. Lucy didn't have bags or baskets, but she had hands. She could cradle food in her arms, hold a stick or stone while walking, carry an infant that couldn't cling to her fur anymore. These abilities mattered. There's another advantage nobody expected. Walking upright reduces heat stress. This sounds weird. You'd think standing up would make you hotter, more body surface exposed to the sun, but the physics work differently. When you walk on 4 legs, your whole back faces the sun. That's a lot of surface area absorbing heat. When you walk upright, only your head and shoulders get direct sunlight. The rest of your body's in your own shadow. Scientists measured this. They built models, calculated heat absorption for quadrupedal, versus bipedal postures at different times of day. The difference is significant. Walking upright reduces heat absorption by about 60% during midday. In the hot African grasslands, this mattered. Overheating is dangerous. It limits how long you can be active, how far you can travel, how much you can search for food during the hottest part of the day. Walking upright helped Lucy's species handle the heat. They could be active longer, cover more ground, survive in more open environments. This wasn't the main reason for bipedalism, but it reinforced the trend, made the adaptation more valuable. Then there's vision. When you stand upright, you see farther. Your eyes are higher off the ground. In tall grass, this makes a huge difference. A chimpanzee on all fours can barely see over grass that's 3 feet high. Lucy, standing upright, could see over grass that was taller than she was. Better vision means better survival. You spot predators sooner. You see food sources from farther away. You can track the movements of other animals. You can navigate more effectively across open terrain. This advantage compounds with the others. You can see farther, walk more efficiently, carry what you find. The combination creates opportunities that didn't exist before. But here's where it gets really interesting. Walking upright changed how Lucy's species interacted socially. When you're on all fours, your face is pointing down or forward. You can't make eye contact easily while moving. Your hands are busy with walking. You can't gesture much. Upright walking changes this completely. Your face is vertical. You can look at others while moving. Your hands are free to gesture, point, reach out. The whole range of possible social signals expands. Modern humans communicate constantly with our bodies. We gesture, make facial expressions, use our hands to emphasize points. All of this requires upright posture. Lucy's species was taking the first steps toward this kind of communication. They couldn't talk. Their brains weren't wired for language yet. But they could gesture more effectively than any ape. They could point at things, reach toward others, use their hands to communicate simple ideas. This laid groundwork for everything that came later. There's also the question of what walking upright did to the pelvis. We talked about Lucy's pelvis earlier, how it was shaped for bipedalism. But that shape created a problem that would define human evolution for millions of years. The pelvis had to be wide enough to support upright walking, but not so wide that the legs were too far apart. Evolution found a compromise. The pelvis became bowl-shaped, relatively narrow compared to body size. This worked for walking, but it created a constraint for birth. A narrow pelvis means a narrow birth canal. This limits how big a baby's head can be at birth. As brain size increased in later human species, this became a serious problem. Modern human babies are born extremely underdeveloped compared to other primates. Our brains are only about 25% of adult size at birth. Chimp babies are born with brains that are about 40% of adult size. We're born helpless because our heads have to fit through the birth canal. That constraint exists because our pelvises are shaped for walking upright. Lucy's species set this pattern in motion. They committed to a pelvis design that would limit brain size at birth for millions of years. But they also created the conditions that would eventually favour bigger brains. Walking upright freed the hands. Free hands could carry things, carry food, carry tools eventually, carry infants who couldn't cling to fur. This created selective pressure for infants who were easier to carry. Lighter, more helpless, born earlier in development. It's a weird feedback loop. Walking upright limits birth, but it also makes carrying helpless infants possible, so evolution starts favouring babies who are born earlier, less developed, with smaller heads that fit through the narrow birth canal. But those babies need more care, more intelligence from the parents, more social cooperation to keep them alive. You can see where this leads. Walking upright created pressures that would eventually favour intelligence, social cooperation, extended childcare, all the things that make us human. But it took millions of years. Lucy's species didn't have any of that yet. They just walked, and that was enough. Think about the timeline. Lucy's species walked upright for about 1 million years before the next major change. 1 million years. That's 100,000 generations. For all that time, walking upright was sufficient. It solved the problems they faced. It let them survive and reproduce. Nothing more was needed. This tells us something important about evolution. It doesn't plan ahead. It doesn't work toward goals. It just solves immediate problems. Walking upright solved problems. The fact that it also created conditions for future changes was accidental. Unintended. Evolution doesn't intend anything. But those unintended consequences mattered. Walking upright changed the selective pressures acting on Lucy's species. It changed what traits were valuable, what mutations would spread, what direction evolution could move. Free hands created opportunities for tool use eventually. Better vision created opportunities for complex social coordination. Reduced heat stress allowed longer periods of activity. Carrying ability allowed new foraging strategies. Each change opened doors, created possibilities, set the stage for what came next. Lucy couldn't know this. She just lived, walked through her world, found food, avoided predators, raised offspring, did what her body was built to do. But by doing that, she and her species were walking towards something unprecedented, toward a future where walking upright would be just the beginning, where free hands would shape tools, where big brains would imagine things that didn't exist yet, where language would let ideas spread faster than genes. All of that was millions of years away, but it started with walking, with that first commitment to 2 legs instead of 4, with Lucy's ancestors coming down from the trees and trying something new, something that seemed like a small change, a minor adaptation to a changing environment. But small changes can have massive consequences. Walking upright was the hinge, the turning point, the moment when our lineage committed to a path that would eventually lead to everything we are. Lucy stands at that hinge point. Her bones record the moment of commitment, the point of no return. She walked, and in walking she carried the future, not knowing, not planning, just living, just surviving, just being what evolution had made her. That was enough. It's always been enough. We're here because Lucy walked, because walking upright worked, because that small change opened doors nobody could have predicted. The bones don't lie. They show the adaptation, prove the commitment, lock down the sequence. Walking came first. Everything else followed. That's what Lucy's skeleton tells us. That's the secret she holds. Not in what she was, but in what she made possible. When you talk about proof that our ancestors walked upright, it's easy to focus just on bones. Bones are great. They stick around for millions of years, but sometimes you find something even wilder. Not a fossil, not a tool, not even a piece of hair or skin. Sometimes you find an actual moment frozen in time. That's what happened at a place called Letoli. Letoli is in Tanzania. It's not far from Olduvai Gorge, where so many early human fossils have been found. But the real treasure at Letoli isn't a skeleton. It's a set of footprints. Real footprints. Not imagined, not reconstructed. Actual steps pressed into soft volcanic ash, then covered and hidden for nearly 4 million years. Here's the story. In the late 1970s, some researchers were exploring the area. They were looking for fossils, like always. The ground at Letoli is covered in ancient ash, the result of volcanic eruptions. One day, someone noticed strange marks on the ground. They looked like animal prints at first, but as they followed the trail it became clear these were not just animal tracks. Some of them looked almost human. The discovery team was led by Mary Leakey. She was legendary in paleoanthropology. Careful, patient. She knew the difference between a footprint and a mark left by wind or water. They started brushing away the ash. More prints appeared. Dozens, then over 70 in a line, stretching almost 80 feet. These were not just random marks. They were a trackway, a path. The footprint showed 2, maybe 3 individuals walking together, side by side, their feet pressed into the wet ash, leaving perfect impressions of toes, arches, and heels. Think about that for a second. These aren't just prints in the mud. They're a snapshot. A moment when ancient creatures, our relatives, walked across a landscape that is long gone. Their steps were preserved by luck. After they walked, more ash fell, then rain. Then time did its work, turning ash to stone. What do these footprints show? Well, first, they prove that walking upright wasn't just something Lucy could do, it was something a whole group could do. The trackway is about 3.7 million years old. That's even older than Lucy herself. The prints look shockingly modern. The big toe points forward, not out to the side like an ape's. There's a clear arch in the foot. The heel strikes first, and the body rolls over the ball of the foot before pushing off with the toes. This is how you walk. This is how I walk. It's the same basic pattern. Scientists measured everything: length of the stride, width between the feet, depth of the impressions. They compared them to modern humans, to chimpanzees, to gorillas. The match is closest with us. Not exact, but close. Whoever made these prints walked much more like a human than an ape. The best guess is that these were Australopithecus afarensis. That's Lucy's species. The timing fits. The size matches what we know from the bones. There are 2 sets of prints, one made by a larger individual, one by a smaller one. Some scientists think there was a third, even smaller, maybe a child. Picture it. 3 hominins walking together, not running, not wandering, walking side by side, in step. Maybe a family, maybe a small group moving through the morning mist. One of them steps in the other's footprints for a while, maybe for fun, maybe to stay close. It's a real moment. Not imagined, not guessed at. The evidence is right there in the ground. There's something almost haunting about it. The bones tell you what they were. The footprints show you how they moved through their world. You can almost feel the rhythm, the quiet slap of bare feet on soft earth, the steady pace, maybe a pause to look around, maybe a glance at each other. Scientists have argued about the details. How fast were they walking? Some say it was a relaxed stroll, about 1 meter per second. That's a comfortable pace. Not in a hurry, not dawdling. Others have suggested the smaller individual was walking a little faster to keep up, maybe even skipping into the other's tracks. One thing is clear. They were walking upright, hands free, eyes forward. No knuckle walking, no awkward waddle. Their gait was natural, balanced, efficient. The Laetoli site gives us more than just proof of upright walking. It gives us a chance to compare ancient movement with our own. When scientists look at the prints, they see the same rolling step that you use when you walk on the beach. Heel, arch, toes, it's all there. But there are differences too. The arch isn't as high as in most modern humans. The toes are a bit longer, especially the second toe. The prints are a little broader, but the basics are the same. These creatures weren't just standing up once in a while. They were committed to walking this way, all the time. This changes how we think about our past. Before Laetoli, there were always doubts. Maybe Lucy's bones were special. Maybe she was an oddball. Maybe the species mostly lived in trees and only stood up now and then. but the footprints show something different. This wasn't an occasional trick, it was a way of life. And here's something else. These tracks were made in open country. No trees nearby, no low branches to grab. Whoever made them was comfortable out in the open, moving across flat ground. That's a big deal. It shows a shift in behaviour, not just in anatomy. Some scientists have dug even deeper. They've looked for signs of how the foot muscles worked. The depth of the toe impressions tells you how much force was used to push off with each step. Turns out, these ancient walkers pushed off with their big toes just like we do. That's not how chimps walk. Chimps use the outside edge of the foot. Their big toes point out. When they walk upright, it's clumsy, slow, not efficient. The Litoli prints aren't like that. They're confident, natural. It's not pretending to walk upright. It's the real thing. The ash that preserved these prints also trapped the marks of other animals. There are footprints from birds, antelopes, even a three-toed horse, all moving through the same space. The humans weren't alone. The ground was busy with life. But their prints are the ones that matter to us. They're a direct line from then to now. Some people wonder about the weather that day. Why were the prints preserved so perfectly? Scientists think there was a light rain before the eruption. The ash fell while the ground was still damp. The walkers came soon after. The ash was just the right consistency, soft enough to take a print, firm enough to hold its shape. Then more ash covered everything, sealing the prints away. It's a 1 in a million event, maybe less. Most footprints vanish in hours or days, washed away, trampled, lost. But these stayed, waiting for someone to find them. The Litoli footprints changed the way scientists talked about early humans. They settled arguments that had gone on for decades. No more guessing about how upright our ancestors really were. The prints are proof, not a theory, not an interpretation. You can't fake a footprint. Some researchers have even made copies of the trackway. They filled the prints with plaster, made rubber molds, recreated the whole thing in museums. You can walk alongside the ancient tracks and see just how similar they are to your own feet. But there's more. The prints show social behaviour too. The fact that 2 or 3 individuals walk together side by side tells you something about their lives. Maybe they stuck together for safety. Maybe they were heading somewhere important. Maybe they were just moving from one food source to another. Some have wondered if the group was a family, maybe a parent and a child. The smaller one steps into the prints of the bigger one. Kids do this all the time. It's a simple way to stay close, to play. Maybe that's what happened here. We'll never know for sure, but the possibility is there. The Litoli site didn't just have footprints. It also had animal bones and teeth. These add more detail to the picture. Scientists can tell what animals shared the landscape, what the climate was like, what plants grew nearby. All of it fits with the idea of a changing environment, a place becoming drier, more open, less like a forest. There's another layer to this. The Litoli footprints are older than Lucy's skeleton, by about 400,000 years. This means upright walking started earlier than some people thought. It wasn't a sudden change, it was a slow process. But by the time of a Litoli, the change was done. Upright walking was locked in, and the footprints aren't the only trackways ever found. Later sites in Kenya have even more recent tracks, showing the same basic pattern. But Litoli is the oldest with this level of detail. It's the gold standard. You might wonder why footprints matter so much when we have bones. Here's the thing. Bones tell you what was possible. Footprints show you what actually happened. You can have a skeleton built for upright walking but never use it. The prints show these creatures did. Day after day. Not an accident. Not a stunt. Just life. This is part of why the Litoli site is so famous in science circles. It's not just about anatomy, It's about behaviour. It's a window into a real moment, not a guess, not a model, actual steps, one after another in a real place by real beings. And it answers a big question. Was upright walking a rare thing? Was it something only a few individuals did? The answer is no. By the time of Laetoli, walking upright was normal, expected, shared by the whole group. This helps explain how later changes could happen. Free hands, tool use, bigger brains, all of those needed upright walking first. The footprints show that base was already in place. The Laetoli prints also changed how scientists looked for evidence. After this discovery, people started searching for more. Ancient footprints. They found some. Not as perfect, not as many, but enough to show that our ancestors have been leaving traces for a long time. There's a kind of magic in that. Our story isn't just in bones or tools, it's in the soft marks we leave behind. Sometimes those marks last far longer than anyone could imagine. The footprints at Laetoli are silent. They don't tell you names or stories, but they tell you about movement, about togetherness, about a way of living that shaped everything that came next. One last thing to think about. When you walk on a beach or across wet ground, you leave prints too. Most vanish in minutes, washed away by waves, wind, or more feet. But every once in a while, the world freezes a moment, holds on tight, keeps it safe for someone far in the future. That's what happened at Laetoli. 3 creatures walking side by side left marks that outlasted everything they knew. No language, no writing, just prints. But those prints say more than words ever could. So we have Lucy's bones, showing what her body could do. And we have the Laetoli footprints, showing what her kind actually did. Together they close the case. Upright walking wasn't a fluke. It was the way forward. The path that step by step to us. This is the kind of evidence that makes old mysteries feel real. Not just stories or guesses, but real moments, real lives, real choices made long ago in a world both strange and familiar. And that's the power of footprints. They remind us that the past isn't just dust and bones. It's movement, it's action, it's a trail leading from then to now, one step at a time. From these ancient footsteps we can trace the journey that led to Lucy, and from Lucy all the way to us. But what about the rest of her story? What do we actually know about Lucy herself, her life, her death, and what happened after? That's where things get even more interesting. So now we get to the real heart of the story, Lucy herself. Not just what her bones tell us about upright walking, or what footprints can say about her kind, but what we actually know about this one individual, the life she might have lived, the world she moved through, and how her story ended. This is the part where science meets imagination. Not wild guessing, but careful work, piecing together clues from every bit of evidence left behind. Let's start with the basics. Lucy was discovered in Ethiopia, in a place called Hadar. Her bones are around 3.2 million years old. When she was found, she was already fossilized. That means her bones had turned to stone, but they still held secrets about her size, her health, even her last moments. Scientists have spent decades studying every fragment, every scratch, every spot where the bone is thicker or thinner. It's almost like reading a diary written in code. First, how big was Lucy? When you lay out her bones, you see she was small. Not just small for a human, but small compared to most apes. She stood about 3 feet 5 inches tall. That's the height of an average 4-year-old today. She weighed around 60 pounds. So picture someone the size of a young kid, but fully grown. Adult teeth, strong bones. She was no child, just tiny by our standards. Scientists think this was normal for her species, Australopithecus afarensis. What about her daily life? Here's where it gets tricky. There are no stone tools with her, no campfire remains, no evidence of clothing, jewellery or art. Her world was simple, at least as far as we can tell, but not empty. The land around Hadar was a mix of open spaces and some trees, not dense forest, not full desert. It was a changing landscape with rivers, patches of woodland and grassy areas. There were animals everywhere. Antelope, ancient elephants, crocodiles, turtles, even big cats. Some were familiar. Some were gone long before humans arrived on the scene. Lucy probably spent a lot of time moving. Not in a straight line, but wandering, searching for food, water, safe places to sleep. Scientists think her diet was mostly plants, fruits, leaves, maybe some seeds or roots. Her teeth aren't sharp like a predator's. They're more like a chimp's, good for chewing soft things. But she also had strong jaws, so she could handle tough foods when she had to. Did she hunt? Probably not in the way you imagine. There's no sign she used weapons or planned attacks. Maybe she grabbed a lizard or a bird's egg now and then, but most of her calories came from plants. And she had to work for every bite. What about her family? This is one of those questions that keeps scientists guessing. We don't have evidence of a mate, children, or parents buried with her. But when you look at other fossils of her species, they often turn up in groups, bones from several individuals close together. Some scientists believe this means they lived in small bands, maybe 10 or 20, sometimes more. Not big villages, not lone wanderers, something in between. Living together would have helped with safety. Big cats and hyenas were real dangers. Staying close could mean the difference between life and death. Lucy's arms and hands give more clues to her daily habits. Her arms were long, almost as long as her legs. Not quite like a chimp, but close. Her fingers were curved, not straight like ours. This suggests she still spent some time climbing, maybe to escape predators or to reach fruit, maybe even to sleep in trees at night when the ground was most dangerous. But her hands were also dexterous. She could grasp, hold, maybe even carry things. Not as skillful as later humans, but not clumsy either. Her feet, as we talked about before, were built for walking upright, but her toes were a bit longer, and the arch wasn't as high as ours. So while she could walk long distances, she probably wasn't running marathons. Still, for her size, she was a good walker. Not fast, not slow, just steady, covering ground day after day. Now let's talk about health. What kind of shape was Lucy in? Her bones show she was fully grown, an adult. But she didn't live a long life by our standards. Most estimates say she was around 12 to 15 years old when she died. That sounds young, but for her species it was normal. Life was short and risky. A lot of individuals didn't make it to adulthood at all. Those who did still faced injury, disease, and predators. Her teeth are well worn, but not rotten. That fits with a diet of tough, fibrous plants. There are signs of healed injuries on her bones, small breaks, places where bone thickened over time. This tells us she survived accidents, maybe falls or fights. Life was rough, but she was resilient. There's another clue in the wear patterns on her teeth. Scientists can look at the microscopic scratches and pits. These show what kinds of food she ate. Lucy's teeth have a mix of fine scratches and deeper pits. This matches a diet of fruit, leaves, and sometimes harder foods, maybe nuts or seeds. When food was scarce, she probably ate whatever she could find. Flexibility was key. But the biggest question is always this: how did she die? For years nobody knew. The bones don't shout out an answer. They don't have a label saying killed by a lion or starved in a drought. For a long time, scientists just guessed. Maybe she was swept away in a flood. Maybe she was attacked by a predator. Maybe it was something simple, like a bad fall. Then, in 2016, a new study came out. A team looked closely at her skeleton using modern scanning tools. They found something strange. Several of her bones, her arm, her shoulder, her knee, had fractures. Not just any fractures, but ones with a certain pattern. The breaks looked fresh, not healed. They matched what you see in people who fall from a great height. The conclusion? Lucy might have died from a fall. Maybe she fell out of a tree. Think about that for a second. It's actually pretty tragic. A small young adult climbing a tree for fruit or safety. Maybe the branch snapped. Maybe she lost her grip. It happens even today with chimpanzees and young gorillas. One bad fall, and that's it. The impact broke her arm and leg, then her body hit the ground hard. The injuries were so severe she wouldn't have survived. Not everyone is convinced by this idea. Some scientists say the fractures could have happened after death, when her bones were buried and crushed by sediment. Others say the pattern is too close to a fall to ignore. For now, it's the best guess we have. Lucy, the famous skeleton, might have died the same way a modern ape sometimes dies, by falling from a tree she climbed all her life. After her death, something strange happened. Her body didn't get eaten by scavengers, torn apart, or scattered. Instead, she was quickly buried. Maybe by a flash flood, maybe by shifting earth. The burial was fast enough to keep her bones together. That's rare. Most skeletons from that time are found in pieces scattered over a wide area. Lucy's bones were close to each other. That's part of why she's so valuable to science. Over time, minerals seeped into her bones. They turned hard and heavy, preserving the shape but changing the chemistry. Fossilization is slow. It takes thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of years, but eventually bone becomes stone. That's how Lucy survived, hidden underground, waiting for someone to find her. Scientists learned more from her skeleton than almost any other fossil. Her pelvis told us about walking. Her knee joint showed the angle her leg bones made. Her skull, though small, gave clues about her senses. Her jaw told us about her diet. Even the shape of her ribs and spine showed how she carried herself. But there are limits. There's no way to know the colour of her skin, her eyes, or her hair. We don't know if she had a quiet personality or was a leader in her group. Did she laugh? Did she mourn her friends? There's no evidence for those things. The bones are silent on matters of personality or emotion. But knowing she lived through injuries, grew to adulthood, and died in a way that left her mostly whole, that's already a lot. One thing that always gets me is how ordinary her death probably was. Not a heroic ending, not a grand battle. Maybe just a slip, a moment of bad luck, like what happens to so many creatures in the wild. It's a reminder that even the most famous fossil in the world was once just another living being, going through her daily routine. After her death, Lucy's body began a new journey. Layers of dirt and sand built up over her. The river nearby changed course. The animals around her evolved, disappeared or moved elsewhere. Seasons came and went. For more than 3 million years, her bones waited. Then, in 1974, humans found her. Not her own kind, but a different species. Us. People who would give her a name, study her, and wonder about her life. We see her as a symbol, but for most of history, she was just another creature lost to time. The way her skeleton was found also tells us something about the world she lived in. The land was different then, wetter, full of shifting rivers and lakes. Herds of ancient animals grazed nearby. Predators hunted along the water's edge. The air was thick with the sounds of birds, insects, and the occasional roar of something big and hungry. It was a dangerous world, but also a world full of life. Lucy fit into that world the way a gazelle fits into the savannah today. Not at the top, but not helpless either. Just another player in the game of survival. People sometimes wonder if Lucy was aware of her place in the world. Did she know she was doing something new by walking upright? Almost certainly not. For her, it was just the way things were done. She didn't invent bipedalism. She inherited it from her ancestors and passed it on to those who came after. It's only from our view, millions of years later, that her life seems special. Lucy's story is important because it gives us a real anchor point. She's not just an idea or a theory. She's a real being who lived, moved, and died in a specific place. Her bones are proof that our family tree is rooted in real individuals, not just blurry outlines. After she died, her group moved on. Maybe they noticed she was missing. Maybe they saw her fall. Maybe not. Life went on, as it always does. The landscape changed. The climate shifted. Her kind survived for hundreds of thousands of years after her. Then, slowly, they faded from the fossil record. The story doesn't end with Lucy's bones, though. Her discovery started a wave of new finds. Scientists began to look in other places, searching for more clues. They found other skeletons, some older, some younger, some more complete, some just scraps. Each one adds a little more to the picture, but Lucy is still the most famous. Maybe because she was the first so complete. Maybe because she's just old enough to feel mysterious, but not so ancient that we can't relate to her. There's something about her that sticks in the mind. Her life was simple, short, and full of risks. She ate what she could find. She travelled with her group. She climbed when she needed to, walked when she could. She survived injuries. She lived to adulthood. And then, in a single moment, her story ended. In the end, Lucy's bones are a bridge between worlds. They connect us to a time when nothing was certain, when every day was a test. They remind us that being human isn't just about brains or tools or language. It's about adapting, surviving, and moving forward, even in the face of danger. Lucy's life and death didn't change the world overnight. But the path she walked, sometimes on the ground, sometimes in the trees, led to everything that followed. The evidence is in her bones, her teeth, the way her joints fit together. It's in the place where she fell, the dirt that covered her, the stones that kept her safe until we uncovered her story. And so, from a small, tough, tree-climbing walker in ancient Africa, we get a glimpse of our own beginnings. Not grand or dramatic, just real, just life, lived day by day, step by step until the very end. Next, we'll look at what happened after Lucy, how her species faded, and what came next on the long road to us. After Lucy, the world didn't stand still. Her species, Australopithecus afarensis, kept going for hundreds of thousands of years. But time didn't freeze for them either. The world was always changing. New threats, shifting weather, different animals moving in and out. Life for her kind kept rolling forward, but it didn't just stay the same forever. Other creatures were waiting in the wings. Some were cousins, some would be our ancestors. It's like a family photo where faces keep fading out and new ones appear, but nobody knows who's going to be the next star. Let's look at what happened after Lucy. Scientists have found fossils younger than hers, and others older too. But after her species, the family tree starts to branch in strange ways. Some groups died out, others changed shape, size, or habits. It's not a straight line from Lucy to us. It's more like a tangled bush, with branches twisting, splitting, and sometimes breaking off for good. After the age of Australopithecus afarensis, other types of Australopiths appeared. Some of their names sound similar, but each group was a little different. Take Australopithecus africanus, for example. This group lived in southern Africa, starting about 3 million years ago. Their faces were a bit flatter, their teeth and jaws were smaller, closer to what we see in later humans. They still had small brains, but their bodies seemed just a little more like ours. There were also the robust australopiths. Names like Paranthropus boisei or Paranthropus robustus come up in science books. These creatures had big jaws, huge cheekbones, and massive teeth. Not for eating meat, but for chewing tough plants, roots, nuts, maybe grass. Their skulls look almost cartoonish, with big crests on top where muscles attached. They were built for power, not brains. These robust types lasted a long time, but eventually they disappeared. Their special diet kept them going when food was tough, but it may have limited them when things changed. Now, here's where things start to get interesting. Around 2.8 million years ago, the first fossils appear that scientists put in our own group, Homo. These are not yet humans, as we know them, but they're closer to us than any australopith. The oldest known Homo fossil is a jawbone found in Ethiopia. It's not much, just a piece of bone and some teeth, but it's a sign. Something new is starting. This new group, Homo, had smaller teeth and jaws but slightly bigger brains. Not huge yet, not even close to modern human size, but the direction was set. Over time, brains got bigger, faces got flatter, and bodies adapted for walking long distances. The first Homo species we know much about is Homo habilis. The name means handy man. Why? Because with them, we start to see stone tools showing up in the record. Homo habilis lived in Africa from about 2.4 to 1.4 million years ago. They weren't tall or strong by modern standards. Most stood about 4 feet tall, maybe a little more. Their brains were about half the size of ours, but the key thing is those tools. Simple, yes. Mostly just rocks chipped to make a sharp edge, but it's a sign of planning, of seeing a problem and coming up with a solution. And with tools, the world opens up. You can cut meat from bones, crack open nuts, maybe defend yourself from animals. For the first time, our ancestors started to leave behind more than just bones. They left clues about how they lived, what they ate, how they fought, even where they slept. The next big leap comes with Homo erectus. This species shows up around 2 million years ago and sticks around for a very long time. Some fossils are just 100,000 years old. That's a run of almost 2 million years, longer than any human species so far. Homo erectus was taller, more upright, and much more like us than anything before. Many stood close to 5 feet 6 inches or even 6 feet tall. Their brains were bigger, about 2/3 the size of ours. But what really sets them apart is travel. For the first time, a member of our family left Africa. Fossils and tools show up in places like Georgia, China, and Indonesia. They crossed rivers, moved into colder lands, and figured out how to survive far from the warm savannas of Africa. They made better tools, hand axes that could cut, chop, or dig. Some scientists even think they might have used fire, though the evidence is still debated. Imagine how different that must have been. Leaving the land you know, heading into the unknown, facing new animals, new plants, new dangers. But Homo erectus managed it. They adapted to freezing winters and burning summers. Their groups may have worked together, sharing food and watching out for each other. It wasn't just survival, it was learning to shape the world around them. While Homo erectus was spreading out, other strange cousins were evolving too. In Africa, you see Homo heidelbergensis, a bigger-brained, muscular species. In Asia, you find the hobbits of Flores, tiny people called Homo floresiensis. In Europe, another branch appeared, Neanderthals. You might have heard of them. Stocky, strong, and smart in their own way, Neanderthals would later meet and even mix with our direct ancestors. So what happened to all these different types? Why are we the only ones left? That's one of the biggest mysteries. For a long time, it was easy to picture a ladder, Lucy at the bottom, then a straight climb to us. But the fossil record doesn't fit that story. It's more like a crowded highway, with many paths running side by side, sometimes merging, sometimes ending suddenly. Some species died out because they couldn't adapt. Maybe a drought wiped out their food. Maybe new predators arrived. Some, like the robust australopiths, were probably too specialized. Their powerful jaws were great for hard foods, but when the environment changed, they couldn't switch diets easily. Others may have lost out in competition with new arrivals who were smarter, worked better together, or just luckier. There's also the question of brains. For a long time, bigger brains seemed like the answer, but it's not just size, it's how you use it. Neanderthals had brains as big as ours, sometimes even bigger, but their tools and culture were different. They buried their dead, made jewellery, even painted on cave walls. But they never built cities or wrote stories. Something was still missing. When you look at Homo sapiens, humans who looked just like us, the story changes again. We show up in Africa around 300,000 years ago. For a long time, we lived alongside Neanderthals, Denisovans, another mysterious cousin, and maybe even tiny Homo floresiensis in Indonesia. At first, our tools weren't much different from theirs. But over time, something new happened. Our ancestors began making art, carvings, beads, cave paintings. They built shelters, made clothes, and traded goods with distant groups. Language probably got more complex, allowing for stories, teaching, and planning. These changes didn't happen overnight. It took thousands of years. But once it started, the pace picked up fast. What was the secret ingredient? Was it just bigger brains? Or was it something else? Maybe a new way of thinking or a genetic change that made language easier? Nobody knows for sure. Some scientists think it was a combination. Social groups got bigger, brains got better at handling new ideas, and culture started to build on itself. Once that snowball got rolling, it never stopped. But let's pause for a second. Why did we survive when others didn't? Neanderthals were tough. Denisovans lived in harsh mountain caves. Even the hobbits managed to live on an island for thousands of years. Why did we outlast them all? One idea is flexibility. Humans can eat almost anything: plants, meat, fish, nuts, roots. We can live in deserts, jungles, mountains, or ice. We're good at learning from others, copying new skills, and teaching our kids. If there's a drought, we can try a new food. If there's a cold snap, we invent better clothes. Our ancestors were always ready to try something different. Another possible reason is how we work together. Humans form groups with complex rules, friendships, and alliances. We share food, care for the sick, and help raise each other's children. This social glue lets us survive when times get tough. If one person gets hurt, others help. If a group member finds new food, the whole group learns. This helped us outlast species that were more solitary or less flexible. But there's a twist. Sometimes it wasn't a fair fight. When Homo sapiens moved into Europe and Asia, Neanderthals and Denisovans started to vanish. Some scientists think we outcompeted them for food and shelter. Others say diseases brought by our ancestors wiped out local populations. There's even evidence of some violence, Neanderthal bones with spear marks. But it wasn't always war. DNA shows that our ancestors and Neanderthals had children together. Their genes live on in us today. In fact, if you have ancestors from Europe or Asia, about 1% to 2% of your DNA comes from Neanderthals. People from some parts of Asia and Oceania have Denisovan DNA too. That means the story isn't one of simple replacement. It's a story of mixing, sharing, and sometimes survival by luck. So, What happened to Lucy's direct descendants? Over hundreds of thousands of years, her species faded. New types took over. Some of her distant relatives may have survived in isolated pockets, but none made it to the present day. Still, parts of their story live on in us, in our bones, our genes, and even the way we walk. If you look at your own feet, you'll notice the arch and the way your toes are arranged. Those details go all the way back to creatures like Lucy. The shape of our pelvis, the curve of our spine, even the way we balance when we run. All of it is a gift from ancestors who figured out how to move through a changing world. Sometimes people ask if we're the end goal of evolution. Are we the finished product? The answer is no. Evolution doesn't have a plan. It's just a process that keeps going. We're here now because our ancestors survived long enough to have children who survived and so on, all the way back to Lucy and before. Our story is built from the stories of those who came before. Each one, from Lucy to Homo erectus to the first artist in a cave, left a mark. Some of these marks are in stone tools or painted walls. Others are in our DNA, hidden inside every cell. Here's the thing. Every time you take a step, you're using a body shaped by millions of years of change. Every time you talk, laugh, or even dream, you're carrying traditions and traits passed down from ancestors who took risks, learned new skills, and made it through hard times. So what came after Lucy? The short answer is everything. Her kind led to other kinds. The branches of our family tree kept splitting, growing, and sometimes dying out. But the roots go deep and the memories live on in ways we don't always see. And even now, scientists are still finding new fossils, new clues, and sometimes even new branches. There are questions we haven't answered yet. Maybe there are lost cousins we haven't discovered, waiting in the dirt, holding more secrets about who we are. As we look back at the long road from Lucy to us, one thing is clear. The past wasn't a straight path. It was a winding journey, full of detours and dead ends. Our ancestors tried, failed, adapted, and sometimes vanished. But some survived, and their survival shaped us. We walk on ground filled with history. Every fossil is a message from the past, sometimes clear, sometimes mysterious. The more we learn, the more we realize how much we share with those early walkers, climbers, and tool makers. The details change, but the story is always about survival, change, and the will to keep going. And that's what came after her. Not just new species, but new ways of living, thinking, and being. The story keeps moving forward, one generation at a time. Now, it's up to us to carry it on. Why does Lucy still matter right now, all these years later? Why do people keep talking about a skeleton dug up in Ethiopia when so much has happened since? It's easy to think her story is just about the past. But the truth is, Lucy's discovery keeps changing how we see ourselves even today. She isn't just a dusty fossil, she's a window into who we are, why we act the way we do, and how we ended up here. Let's start with the basics. Most people don't wake up thinking about ancient bones. But the reason Lucy is in textbooks, on TV, and in museums isn't just because she's old. It's because she shattered the way scientists thought about our place in nature. Her bones forced a reset. Before Lucy, many people saw humans as something special, set apart from the animal world. Maybe we were just smarter apes, or maybe something even more different. But with Lucy, the lines blurred. She showed that the story of humans wasn't a straight line, and it wasn't just about having the biggest brain. Lucy's skeleton makes us ask a giant question. What does it mean to be human? Is it walking on two legs? Is it having a certain size brain? Is it something deeper, like making art or telling stories? Lucy walked upright, but she didn't make tools or paint on cave walls. She was halfway between ape and human, and that's the puzzle. She reminds us that being human isn't about one big leap, but lots of tiny changes stacked up over time. Here's something wild. If Lucy had never been found, the story we tell about ourselves would look totally different. Before her, most experts thought big brains came first, and walking upright was just a side effect. Her skeleton flipped that idea. It showed that moving around on two legs came way earlier. That's a huge shift. It means the spark that set our branch of the family apart wasn't just thinking, it was moving. Now you might wonder why that detail matters today, but think about it. The way we move shapes everything about our lives. Our hips, feet, and back all trace back to that first step taken by creatures like Lucy. Even the way we run, the way we dance, or how we chase after a soccer ball, all of it started with those early walkers. She's in every step you take, even if you never think about her. But Lucy's impact goes beyond just anatomy. Her discovery changed the way science works. It reminded everyone that big breakthroughs can come from small, unexpected finds. When her bones were uncovered, nobody expected to find such a complete skeleton from so long ago. It was a reminder to stay curious and open to surprises. Even in fields where people think they know the story, one new clue can flip everything upside down. Here's another way Lucy matters now. Her story brings people together. When she was found, it wasn't just scientists who got excited. News of her discovery made headlines all over the world. People saw themselves in her, even though she lived so long ago. Maybe it was the way her skeleton looked almost familiar, or maybe it was the idea that she was a missing link, a bridge between the world of apes and the world of people. Whatever the reason, Lucy's story connects us across borders, cultures, and even beliefs. She also shows us how science is a team sport. Lucy's bones weren't just dug up by one person working alone. It took a whole crew, local workers, international scientists, students, and even people who lived in the area. They all played a part. That's how science really works. It's not just lone geniuses. It's people sharing ideas, arguing, testing, and helping each other out. Lucy reminds us that finding answers, especially big ones, is something we do together. Now, here's a twist. Lucy's remains have been studied for decades, but scientists are still learning from her. New technology means experts can scan her bones in 3D, look at the inside without breaking anything, and even check tiny scratches to guess what she ate. Every year someone finds a new detail, a spot where a muscle attached, or a groove that hints at how she moved. Her bones keep giving up secrets, even after all this time. This is a lesson for us now. The past isn't frozen. The more we look, the more we learn. It means that even old ideas can change if we keep asking new questions. Lucy's story is proof that curiosity pays off, even after decades. But let's bring it closer to home. Why does any of this matter to your life? Here's the thing. The way we see our own story shapes how we treat each other. For a long time, people argued about which groups were more evolved or less evolved. Some even used bad science to say that certain people were closer to apes, while others were more advanced. That kind of thinking caused real harm, but Lucy's skeleton and all the fossils like hers show that we're all branches of the same tree. There's no first or last in evolution. We're all connected, and the differences between us are tiny compared to what we share. Lucy helps bust myths about race too. Her bones show that the roots of humanity reach deep into Africa. Every person alive today can trace their story back to places like Ethiopia, Kenya, and Tanzania. The lines that divide us now, skin colour, language, borders, are recent. The things that unite us go way back. Lucy is a reminder that we're all part of one big family, even if we look different on the outside. There's something else Lucy can teach us about survival. Her kind lived through big changes in their world, shifting climates, new predators, uncertain food supplies. She wasn't the strongest or the smartest creature alive, but she and her group adapted. They tried new things. When the forest shrank, they learned to walk in the open. When food got scarce, they tried different diets. We carry that spirit of adaptation with us today. It's in how we handle challenges, learn new skills, and bounce back when things get tough. If you look at how humans live now, you can trace a straight line back to those early survivors. We move to new places, we team up with others, we figure out solutions to problems that seem impossible. That's not just history, it's everyday life. Let's get practical for a minute. Health experts talk about problems like back pain, sore knees, or foot injuries. A lot of those aches and pains come from the way our bodies are built. Guess what? Those features, our curved spine, our arched feet, our short toes, are gifts from ancestors like Lucy. They worked great for walking and running over rough ground. But in today's world, with hard floors and chairs, those same features can cause trouble. When you pull a muscle or strain your lower back, you're feeling the echoes of an ancient design. Lucy's story is literally built into our bodies, for better and for worse. Now think about how we learn. Human children take longer to grow up than almost any other animal. They need years of care, teaching, and play before they can survive on their own. That pattern started early. Even in Lucy's time, young ones needed help from adults. That means group living, sharing, and teaching were there from the start. If you've ever helped a younger sibling, or learned from a parent, you're part of that same chain. Our need for community didn't just appear yesterday, it's baked in. Here's something that always gets me. Lucy's life was short, maybe just a little over a decade, but her kind survived for hundreds of thousands of years. That's only possible if they worked together, watched out for each other, and passed on what they learned. It's a reminder that even small lives can have a huge impact if they're part of something bigger. We don't always know who our actions will help, or what traces we'll leave behind. But every kindness, every lesson, every bit of care can echo down the ages. Let's talk about curiosity for a second. Lucy's bones were buried for more than 3 million years. It took a mix of luck, patience, and stubborn digging to find her. But her discovery opened the door to new questions. Where did walking start? How did early humans think? What was daily life like? Each answer led to more mysteries. That's how science works. It doesn't just fill in the blanks, it gives us new ways to wonder. And that sense of wonder isn't just for scientists. Anyone can feel it. You don't have to know all the details or memorize the names. Just knowing that someone walked the earth so long ago and that her story is linked to yours can make the world feel bigger and maybe a little more magical. Now, here's an interesting idea. Lucy makes us rethink time. When you look at her skeleton, you're staring at a moment from long before cities, writing, or even fire. The gap between her life and ours is huge, but in the grand scheme it's just a blink. The bones we find, the footprints in the ash, the marks left on rocks, all of them are reminders that time moves forward, but the past is never fully gone. It lingers in the details of who we are. Sometimes people wonder if looking back is just nostalgia. Should we focus on the future instead? But understanding where we come from helps us make better choices now. Lucy's story is about change, sometimes slow, sometimes sudden. She teaches us that nothing stays the same forever, but that's not a bad thing. Change brings new chances, new ways to live, and new stories to tell. Think about the world today. We face problems Lucy couldn't imagine. Climate shifts, crowded cities, new diseases, and new ways to talk to each other. But the basic challenge is the same. How do we adapt, survive, and help those around us? Lucy's story says, "You've done it before, you can do it again." Her life is proof that even when things look impossible, survival is possible with creativity and teamwork. Here's something you might not expect. Lucy's discovery also changed how people see Africa. For a long time, some thought of Africa as a place apart from the rest of the world, but Lucy, and fossils like hers, show that Africa is the home of humanity. It's where the story begins. That changes how we think about history, culture, and even ourselves. Every person alive, no matter where they live, can trace their roots back to the same continent. That's a powerful idea. It's one that brings people together even now. There's another reason Lucy matters. Her story reminds us that we're not finished products. Evolution didn't stop with her or with us. Our bodies, minds, and cultures keep shifting. The world changes and we change with it. Lucy's life was shaped by her world, just like ours is. There's no final destination in this journey. We're always in the middle of becoming something new. Think about how fast things change now. New technology, new ways of living, new ideas. Sometimes it feels overwhelming, but Lucy's story puts it in perspective. The biggest changes in history, walking upright, using tools, learning to speak, all took thousands of years. Our story is long and winding. There's no need to rush. Each step matters, even if we don't see where it leads right away. Let's get a little philosophical for a moment. Lucy's bones are fragile. They broke, scattered, and fossilized, but they lasted. That's true for a lot of things in life. The things we build, the words we say, the choices we make, some will fade, some will stick around. We don't get to pick what lasts, but we get to choose what we try to leave behind. Lucy's discovery also brings up another big question. What will future people find from us? Thousands or even millions of years from now, what will they learn about us? What stories will our bones, buildings, or even our trash tell? Lucy reminds us that the past is written by what survives. Every day we're creating the future's history. One last thought. Lucy is a reminder that the world is full of mysteries. There are still places left to explore, secrets buried in the ground, and questions waiting for answers. Even after all this time, we don't know everything, and maybe we never will. But that's okay. The journey matters, even if the destination is always just out of reach. So why does Lucy matter now? Because her story is our story. She's proof that big things come from small beginnings. She shows us that change is constant and that survival depends on working together and staying curious. She reminds us that every step we take carries the memory of those who came before. And she gives us hope that, no matter what the future holds, we have what it takes to keep moving forward. When you lie in bed at night, thinking about how you got here, remember Lucy. Her bones are still speaking. Her story is still unfolding. And a piece of her lives on in every one of us. That's something worth holding on to, even as time keeps rolling on. So, after all this, what do we really take away from Lucy's story? It's tempting to see her as just another fossil, another piece in the long puzzle of human history. But if you look closer, she becomes something bigger, a kind of mirror, showing us both how far we've come and how much is still mysterious. Even after decades of research, her bones keep raising new questions. That's the thing about discovery like Lucy. Every answer leads to more curiosity, not less. Think about the world she came from. It was nothing like our lives now. There were no cities, no roads, no screen glow at night. The land around her was wild, full of dangers and surprises, but she made it work. Her kind survived by being flexible, moving between the trees and open spaces, figuring out how to find food and stay safe. That adaptability is still with us, Even if the challenges have changed, we're still navigating new worlds, just with different tools. Lucy isn't just about bones and old dirt. She's a symbol of how change actually happens. People sometimes think history is made by big inventions or sudden leaps forward, but most of the time, real progress is a slow stack of tiny shifts. One small step, then another, and another. Lucy's upright walk was just the start of a long journey. She didn't know it, but she kicked off a chain of events that would lead to everything from fire to smartphones. It's easy to forget how fragile these moments are. If the river had flooded a little differently, or if a predator had found her first, Lucy's bones might never have lasted. We might never have heard her name. So much of what we know hangs on random twists of fate. That's true for any big discovery, not just hers. A lot of history is about luck, being in the right place, at the right time, with the right eyes to see what others might miss. And here's something interesting. Even though Lucy lived ages ago, her story is a reminder that science is always changing. What we know today might get flipped upside down tomorrow. Lucy herself upended old ideas. Before her, most people thought our brains got big first, and then we stood up. Her bones showed that wasn't true. They forced scientists to look at the evidence in a new way. That's how real learning happens, by staying open, not getting stuck on old beliefs. That lesson matters for us too. We get used to thinking the way things are now is the way they must stay. But Lucy's story proves nothing is locked in. The world shifts and so do we. Maybe it's a new technology, a new way of thinking, or just a small choice that snowballs into something bigger. You never know what change will matter most until you look back. Sometimes it's the things we barely notice at the time that end up shaping everything. Lucy also gets us thinking about belonging. Her kind didn't live alone. They moved in groups, watched out for each other, and probably shared food and shelter. That sense of connection is something we still need. No one gets through life alone. We lean on friends, family, and even total strangers more than we realize. The need to belong, to be part of something bigger, runs deep. It goes all the way back to creatures like Lucy. Every time we help someone or ask for help, we're echoing patterns that started long before written history. And that brings up another point. Sometimes people use history to draw lines. Who belongs, who doesn't, who counts as us versus them. Lucy's skeleton cuts right through all of that. She reminds us that the things we have in common are so much older and more important than the things that set us apart. Underneath it all, our needs, hopes, and fears aren't so different from those of our earliest ancestors. There's a kind of comfort in that. When life feels overwhelming or confusing, knowing you're part of a much bigger story can help. The challenges you face today might look new, but people have always faced the unknown. They invented, adapted, and made mistakes. And they kept moving forward step by step. Lucy's story is proof that you don't need to be perfect or have all the answers. You just need to keep going, learning as you do. Let's talk about wonder for a minute. There's something magical about looking at a pile of old bones and realizing they belong to a living, breathing creature. Someone who woke up, looked for food, maybe felt fear or happiness, and then became part of the earth again. It's a reminder that time is both huge and personal. All those years ago feels impossibly far, but Lucy's story brings it close. She's a bridge between worlds, her world and ours. What about the future? That's the big question Lucy leaves us with. If someone digs up our remains someday, what will they see? What story will our bones tell? Will they see a species that learned from its past, or one that ignored the lessons of change and connection? We don't get to choose what lasts, but we do get to pick what we value now. Curiosity, teamwork, and the courage to face uncertainty. That's the real legacy Lucy points toward. Science is full of unfinished stories. Lucy is one of the most famous, but there are plenty of mysteries left. There are bones waiting in the ground, questions waiting to be asked, and moments waiting to change everything we think we know. That's exciting, but it's also humbling. No matter how much we discover, there will always be things we can't quite explain. In the end, Lucy's story is a gentle reminder. Life is a series of steps, sometimes forward, sometimes sideways. The path isn't always clear, but each step matters, even if you can't see the next one yet. Lucy made her mark not by doing something huge, but just by living her life, adapting, and passing on what she could. So when you think about where you fit in this big picture, remember Lucy. Remember that change is normal, that teamwork matters, and that wonder isn't just for experts. We're all part of this story, still being written, still unfolding, and that, in its own quiet way, is a reason to feel hopeful as you let your thoughts drift and your eyes grow heavy.